And here we go.
Let's go.
Let's go. All right. I think everything is working. So, yeah, this is kind of, it's been a while. Welcome to Coffee Break. So, there's a little bit of backstory. We'll do our land acknowledgement. We'll introduce everybody, and we'll get into it. So, first of all, I'd like to start by just saying, hi, I'm Ren. I'm an English student at UWM. We are no longer burdened by the hell of classes and are now in the summer, kind of. And I'm joined by...
I'm Matthew Carricker. I'm a doctoral student in anthropology at UWM. And yeah, that's me. I'm here. Summer school. Let's go.
Summer school.
Summer stream. Summer school stream.
Summer school stream.
Hashtag SS. Is that a thing?
I don't know, but here we are. So let me...
It is in Google Apps for it.
Where's my settings on music volume? I love the music of this game, but I am going to turn it down just a little bit so that we can talk over it. As much as that hurts me, because the music of this game is absolutely amazing. So the short story is I received like 2 things from my friends that were like, hey, you know, we like watching serious play, but like, come on. One thing was, hey, you know, you guys should stick with the game for a while because you have a tendency not to talk about the game at all. So I was like, all right, fine, whatever. And the other thing was to play Helltakers, so at some point we're going to play Helltakers. But today, I'm going to stick with the game for a while, and we're going to, every time I run Coffee Break throughout all of the summer, I'm only going to play the Supergiant games in order. I'm going to start with Bastion, I'm going to make my way to Hades, and obviously, we're only going to do a little bit of Hades because, like, I could play Hades forever, and it just would never stop.
Yeah, I think the precarious, if you're finding your viewing of our streams precarious in terms of what we cling on to, it is only a reflection of the wider precarity under which we produce our content. You know?
It's a metaphor. Everything is a metaphor. So, let's read the land acknowledgement, and then let's get into it. I'm gonna just have to tab out for this because we have it on the pin message.
Yeah, it's nested. It's super nested.
Yeah.
You know.
All right. We acknowledge that in Milwaukee, we live and work on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homelands along the southwest shores of the Michigami. Part of North America's largest system of freshwater lakes, where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Connecticut rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. Let's play some Bastion. So, all right, we're just gonna do normal mode.
That was very smooth.
Thanks.
Well
We're just gonna play normal mode. This hurts me a little bit because I've been playing Bastion with all the idols turned on for God knows how long.
Proper story is supposed to start at the beginning. Ain't so simple with this one. Now here's a kid whose whole world got all twisted.
Right, I've never played Bastion. I have no idea what's going on, and even if you know, the thing is, if I don't know the game, you would think that I might be able to come in with some critical theories and sort of perspective, but my understanding of that is also shoddy as well. So we'll see what input I have here.
And Matthew can hear the game, so there will be.
Give me a nutshell here. Give me a nutshell explanation of Bastion.
Why would I give you an explanation if we're just gonna play the whole game? You're gonna see it all.
What do you mean? Why read the sign when I can just go to the viewpoint?
In the calamity.
That is quite correct. So you're smashing, you're grabbing, there's paths.
No, ma'am. It's a gas fella. Forced out from under.
So this guy's gonna try and target and hit me, and I've just gotta maneuver around him and take him out. All that. It's a pretty simple game as far as like being an isometric brawler.
You're fighting with a hammer there.
Yep, this is just what I've got. There are a lot of other weapons.
Brawler? Is that a genre? A subgenre?
I think so. Yeah, it's kind of an RPG with some isometric kind of brawler elements. All these track rounds are hand-drawn. Or not hand, I don't know if they're hand-drawn, but they are like digitally rendered, and they're all flat, and I'm just kind of running across them. They look really beautiful. And right now I have the gun on my alternate, and I've got the hammer on my main. and we'll pick up a bunch of other stuff as we go.
He's worked up quite a thirst
But
by
other
now,
than that,
so
we're
that
here.
fountain looks real inviting. Sometimes you just need a drink.
Every once in a while, I'll run to these
No, that's
fountains
cool.
and can get these things back.
A school of squirts tunnels up.
And if I end up being quiet at any point in time, it's only to appreciate the narrator's amazing voice. Which I hope you can hear.
He's the narrator, Sean Bean.
I don't know who the actor is. If you want to look it up, you totally can.
Kid finds a memento from a girl he knew. Oh,
So yeah, we are gonna be the summer school supervisors. We're gonna be the
and then
Ren and I and Morgan have agreed to take up the scheduling for the summer.
Just
so
for
we're
coffee
gonna
break.
be-
There are other people who are going to be doing this stuff.
Yeah, just for coffee break. We're gonna be like the guys that, to use an American analogy, at the summer camp, we're gonna be the guys with the tight shorts and the whistles.
he sets foot inside
Which I guess
one
makes
of
everybody in the
Sylvia's
chat
famous
campers, according to that
Inside
now.
Yeah.
Ronde's
Hello,
bar,
campers!
the calamity got him for his drinking dead.
So the world is kind of, all we know up to this point is this is what the world is. Like, this isn't some sort of artistic rendition. I mean, it certainly is an artistic rendition of the world,
Kid
but
finds
like,
his trusty shield.
it's a little bit more than that. Things have fallen apart considerably, and we don't really know
Just
why.
as he's getting a handle on it, the security takes him for a petty thief.
And we're gonna have to figure that stuff out.
Clang.
As time goes
Shield
on.
saves his hide.
So there's intrigue.
Yep. And it's got like a western feel to it. I don't know if you could tell.
Windbags start turning.
I wasn't really getting Western. I was seeing more like a bazaar, like Alexandria vibe, especially in that sort of Nile blue that's coming through and a lot of the columns and stuff.
Yeah, it's a little bit more colorful than like your traditional kind of duster, but
More squirts start coming out of the woodwork.
you'll notice also it mixes in. I think this is where the storytelling really picks up, especially with games that rely so heavily on narration. It's not just I'm gonna narrate your actions. It's that every once in a while you'll run into something, and the narrator will be able to give you some backstory as to why it's relevant to the character's personal life.
Kid sees
Cool.
the weight of the bastion.
So you get a little bit of that
mixture
slice of life.
I like that mixture there of swarm and brute enemies as a dungeon master. You know.
Ronde always wanted his ashes scattered here.
Yeah, there's a lot of like subtle references to kind of the death and desolation that has gone on, but it's always in this kind of like romantic
He gets a
counterlight.
good look at things on his way.
So you get things like this guy is turned into ash and he has a statue,
on top of a
but
breaker's
by
bowl.
destroying his ashes, I'm not doing destruction to the environment. I'm spreading his ashes across his like old shop, you know.
Yeah.
We got the bow. An old Supergiant standby. We got the power shot bow. You'll see this in a lot of their games. Is a bow that so that little bit of time when I'm growing white, I can get extra damage in. And so a lot of it is about like contextually making sure you're making your timing happen.
The kid pockets a memento
And we
from
also
the breakers.
got-
Once the fastest men in the land.
You'll also notice that a lot of the time the narrator is giving back things like about the culture of the land and the people who have occupied it, right? So they're this group called the Breakers, and I have one of their bows now. They're apparently the best kind of arrow shots in the land, right? But they are now all dead now, and all that's left is the material culture
Right back at you.
of what it happens to have survived the
Good news
apocalypse.
is the emergency
That's
defense
cool.
system
It's a common trope, which is always, given a new birth, right? It's as old as the dungeon itself, because it's a kind of storytelling without NPCs, right? So you're trying to... The basic problem is you're trying to tell a story without a storyteller. And so, you have to go into that material culture, the archaeology of a place. And a lot of the times it'll be sort of like your Lara Croft kind of your protagonist will say something like, these ruins are from X people who lived Y 100 years ago, it's always interesting to see how the concept is reimagined.
Yeah. Cool. Timbalaya says in the chat, I feel like the Western vibe is largely due to the narrator's Sam Elliott impression. And like, I
finds the distillery.
There are parts of that I agree with, and then you get to sections, especially in the wilds, that are just like, and we'll get to them later, right? I don't want to spoil too much, but there are sections in the game that are, I think, a lot more from a level design perspective Western. But they are later in the game because the game is roughly blocked into 2 segments. One where you're in kind of the not on the frontier, and one where you're on the frontier.
One sip of the spirits in that distillery.
So wait,
But a lot of the early stuff comes from this
what is
narrator.
the frontier defined in Bastion?
Well, you'll see. I mean, like, again, like, these are all things I want to kind of, like, lay out as we go. For now, how I get my upgrades, by the way, is by choosing what beverages, alcoholic beverages, I want to distill. So I can get Squirt Cider, which gives me extra 10 health. I can get Dead Drum, which gives me 10% crit chance when I'm at full health. Or I can get Fetching Fizz, which is kind of like your magnet. It brings in all the cash, makes sure you don't lose any of the fragments. And I'm going to take Fetching Fizz for now, because I want as much money as possible, because I'm likely going to need it in a way that I won't much later in the game. It kind of becomes superfluous once you get to a certain point. And we also have the Arsenal, which lets us pick our weapons. And we have, you know, and also see a little bit about what these weapons may have been used for before they were either before they were weapons or who would have wielded them beforehand. The hammer being something for people who constructed the walls. We don't know much about the walls except that they exist. And that, you know, they would have been used to keep things that out from the city that is inside the walls. And the Fang Repeater being this kind of like old-fashioned repeating rifle used by Ura hunters. And so these weapons also are the first places where we get a clear divide between the Ura and the Solandians as like 2 civilizations, but it's not really clear what that means at all yet, right? All of these things are kind of uncovered as you move through the world. The world just hints at the fact that it's been inhabited at one point up to now. Yeah, and I agree, David. I tend to pick up treasure magnets early in these sorts of things. Also, we have more skills. We can get Bolt Burst or Dancing Shot. I'm probably going to take Dancing Shot, honestly, because I really like the bow. I think the bow's really good. And I like the hammer a lot. I like to have a melee weapon and a ranged weapon. Let's try out that secret skill. Wow, yeah, that's really good. That's pretty good wave clear.
Some of them squirts birthing like crazy in a couple of corners.
So these are like spawners. I'm interested, like, as we move through these dungeons, since clearly the level design is intriguing to you, what you think of, like, how they've managed to lay out these things and do difficulty and that sort of stuff. More the mechanics. By the way, this is Supergiant, or was Supergiant's first game as a studio, too.
Okay.
So, like, this was the debut in 2011.
He never used them, though.
I see. 2011.
Old ferry barge sends the kid on his way. The Bastion's real close now.
So the Bastion is a place.
Mm-hmm.
And a place you're going to in the first level, so ends up being a hub?
Yes, it is the hub. It's a little more than just a hub, but again, like, all these things are things that need to be kind of parsed out as the narrative continues, and not things that I can, like, spoil immediately. Especially since, you know, I don't know if anybody in the chat hasn't played this game before. Who knows? It's kind of a famous indie game. I think it's got a lot of love from fans and indie fanatics. I don't know how much it gets cited academically, but it's certainly, like, one of the darlings of the indie space.
Smell of barley and spoiled blueberry.
Darlings of the indie space. I wish I was a darling of the indie space.
Oh, Matthew, that's a blog post right there. I'm a Matthew Carricker, darling of the indie space. Oh, hey, they fell through the world. So, as with D&D, size is indicative of danger in the early game.
Boss, or?
This is kind of a mini-boss, yeah. This game doesn't... It has a few, like, what I would say maybe are boss encounters, but every boss encounter is really just an enemy that you're going to face moving forward, you know?
Yeah.
Nice, we gotta level up. Not that it means that much. You'll notice also as we play that I don't rely on my tonics very much. Oh, hell yeah, we get a ton of money.
Tonics being the food that you food.
Tonics are, so I have 2 sets of drinks over here. Everything in your inventory as far as your skills and everything is managed with drinks. The black tonics are your special abilities. That's how many casts of my special I have. And on the left hand, you'll see the health tonics, and those are, those fully heal me. But I only get 3 of them. Okay, so these guys are just gonna fall down. We don't have to worry about them.
Okay. Yeah, potion economy, right? That's another thing.
See, that core kid took was the only thing making this particular run stay afloat.
Actually, I'll just queue
For
that and
example,
take those guys.
Keeps running.
Yeah, I'm playing Stalker Shadow Chernobyl. Same thing. You've got like a not a potion economy so much as a health kit economy. I can see that you're busy.
Well, I'm listening. You know, said you got to put the health kit economy there.
Where it needs to go.
Health kit economy, health potion economy, whatever you want to call it. You know, you want people to feel like, because the function of a potion, like a say a healing potion, is that you feel like you can put yourself into extra spaces of risk. You can go that a little bit further, a little bit more danger, because you can always use that one. But you know, the more, it's one of those things where the more saturated your inventory becomes with a potion of a certain type, the less value it has, you know? Unless it's something that you need all the time, like bandages in Stalker, because you're always getting shot and you're bleeding, so you need to keep using bandages. And you probably get enough bandages off of somebody you kill than you used in killing them, right? So it sort of balances out in the long term. But it's a scarcity thing. It's another way in which, you know, it's what I saw a meme the other day that was like, if you ask a dungeon master the question about whether you'd rather fight a duck-sized horse or a hundred duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck, and he'll tell you about action economy. And it was like, whoa, a little bit of it's pretty subversive, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, it's...
I tried to let the kid down.
I think Supergiant's really interesting about how, like, it's not that they come up with, like, new solutions to these sorts of things. It's that their solutions are, I think, quite elegant in terms of design, right?
Just
like
that, the Bastion comes alive.
there's no difficulty in Bastion, right? Now, not that there's no difficulty, but there's no, like, difficulty that's guaranteed, right?
Now the Bastion
Instead, there are modifiers that I choose to use or not to use. And the same thing with health, right? So there's not like I don't get health on hit, I don't get health back for, you know, other things. I just have these 3 things. And anytime I pick one up, I pick them up, and that's that. So if I run out, I run out. If I don't take damage, I don't take damage. They're not relevant, you know?
Totally.
So we can only build the arsenal or the distillery right now. I am going to build the shrine as quickly as possible. Because I'm going to crank the modifiers into oblivion as quickly as possible. Otherwise, you guys are just going to watch me steamroll this game. And whole ass, nobody in the audience, no matter how excited they may be, probably wants me to just steamroll everything. So let's get the arsenal so we can switch our weapons out. Let's see what we've got. Mirror Shield is really, really good. And we are going to do like a 100% on this, so I am planning on stopping and doing all the extra stuff. It should be pretty easy, I think. Welcome, Davey Vampire. Oh, can I only max out the Shrine in New Game Plus? It's been a long time since I went back to the base game. So I guess we're going to just crank the Shrine as high as we can. So here we go. Now we're on the map. So we can do a bunch of stuff here. As you can see, there's the map has... You know, the frontier is way out here, and then
love a good map.
Other stuff here. The wall that has been discussed is gestured to here. Obviously, you can't read any of this because it's in its own language. I don't know if Bastion has a consistent internal language. That's a good question for chat if anybody does know. But yeah, let's so I'm gonna also do the challenges, which are the proving grounds. Those are gonna give me a bunch of upgrade materials and everything else. They're not super relevant right now, but I'd rather get them out of the way earlier than later. So we're gonna go do the Breaker's Bow challenge now.
Breakers used to come here.
This challenge gave me so much crap when I started. It's another bit of elegant design, I think, where it's not conceptually difficult.
He's focused.
It's just
He's armed.
difficult.
And he's off.
So my goal is to fire as few shots as possible and get rid of everything in this arena.
Oh, I see. So straight lines. Does the arrows go through?
They do if I power shot them. So I can do this in 5 shots. If I can power shot. So we're gonna try it, and I line myself up right. So where's the bow? Did I pick up the bow?
I didn't we're having a world map, but all of the levels seem to be floating miles in the sky.
What do you mean?
Well, you know, there's a world map where you go between different locations, but every location is in the sky.
Yes.
Where the map implies that the locations would be on the ground. No?
Yeah, absolutely. This is part of the kind of weirdness of Bastion's world and the aesthetic of its cataclysm, right? So we know that the world has been destroyed, but we don't know how or why at this stage. And you know, these are questions that are important, and they're you know, actually the critical kind of push of the game. So yeah, 5 shots, got it in first try. Trust me, the first time I did that, no way that was ever gonna happen. Tambalaya says in chat that this wasn't the aesthetic they were into then, or I was more interested in scrappy experimental art games. And yeah, I completely understand that. I think like when I started playing games, I couldn't be bothered to play shooters at all. Because it just like Halo wasn't interesting to me. I didn't find Call of Duty interesting or any of that. So even shooters that were more open-minded or interesting, I just couldn't get myself into. I only played platformers for like the first 8 years that I played games or something. And so this game came along, and it was one of the first indie games I picked up. But I absolutely get, like, you get into a mindset with what games you'll play and won't play, and it's hard to break out of it, I think, at first. I still don't play a lot of like visual novels, even though I think visual novels are quite neat. And I hear you, Davey Vampire. I also have been with Supergiant pretty much since this game came out. I think this was right about the time I got into Steam games, and so it was cheap, and I picked it up. And since then, I have not looked back. I love their stuff, and that's why we're going to go through all their games. So let me stop babbling. Let's go to the Workman Ward and play another map. Sorry, Matthew. I'm trying to like manage chat and everything. I hope I'm not talking over you at all.
Now he lands at the
No, don't worry about it. It's fine. I'm not really, you know, I'm staying away from the public-facing, game-oriented part of our Twitch stream, you know. I'd rather just be a canned voice. Keep me humble, you know.
Yeah, so since we're talking about map design, here's an interesting thing. There are 4 places that I can go here, and one of them has the thing I'm looking for, which is the core, and the other 3 don't. I'm gonna go to all of them anyway, but I'm pretty sure it's always consistently the same. I'm not sure if it's a randomized spawn or if it's like the same spawn. But, you know, instead of having one linear dungeon, it's like, you know, you go around and try to hit all its stuff, which isn't necessarily, like, non-linear game design in a mostly linear game is always kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it kind of, it's interesting when it comes to,
Oh, we got it.
Oh, you got it already?
Yeah, I think it is always the same one. I don't think it's randomized. But like I said, I'm gonna go check out the other stuff anyway. Ooh, let's recover. Power shot through that and then just tank that health.
Now there's a new marshal in town.
Oh, I probably shouldn't have grabbed the core. I bet I can't stick around if I grab the core. I'm an idiot. Oh no, I forgot that the whole world destabilizes whenever you take a core off of a place. We'll see. I'm gonna hang around anyway.
He heads for the east side, where windbags used to keep the local forge.
I'm getting knocked in the air a lot. So we can now see the forge for the first time as well. The forge is where I go to improve my weapons and stuff, right? So if I want to, I can spend money to upgrade the hammer on 2 paths, and once I get an upgrade, I can always swap back between them, or I can spend money to upgrade the bow. The hammer is slightly more expensive, but what do you want me to see me upgrade? Would you prefer me to upgrade the hammer or the bow? Any preference?
I mean, you seem to be doing pretty good at the hammer, so upgrade the bow.
Alright, sounds good. So I can either get extra draw speed or extra penetrations per shot. I'm going to take the draw speed because this thing is slow as hell.
Yeah, I saw that when you're going against that big guy. You want to be able to, like, take the bow out, get a hit when you're still in that intermediate range, and then take out your melee weapon. The draw speed, very, very important.
It's not like a huge increase. I mean, it is percentage-wise. 25% is pretty massive. It doesn't necessarily feel like it all the time. Also, all the characters you run into have names and identifiers. It's kind of hard, like... I think this is something that early in my D&D life, I really wanted to have a character who had like a title, you know? And I never got there. And also my DMs kept telling me, no, titles are for important people. You know?
Like being the king of Scumbag Alley.
Yeah, exactly. Or like this guy is Percy the Snitch, right? And I don't know what the hell that means. It's implied that the narrator knows. And it's apropos enough in the world that, like, people who lived in Celandia would know. But I don't know who Person the Snitch is, you know?
Totally.
They always said old Gershel wouldn't go without a fight.
You mean like dynamic descriptor tags?
Yeah.
Right, that you can use to infer somebody's character without knowing them personally.
Yeah, exactly. Or their prowess, right? Like if
Tony
somebody's
Blair
a
the
sharpshooter,
liar.
you know, oh, okay. Yeah, like Tony Blair the Liar, that's about right.
Kid ain't ever seen an elephant's work before.
Oh, yes, we got the machete.
Just about anything. Except for this.
So, the machete's really interesting because, as you can see, the attack speed is ridiculous. But I can also hold it down to throw it. And, you know, like any good weapon, I can disarm myself to do a ranged attack. I like the machete a lot. It doesn't end up being great at, like, the, end game play of the game, because in order to use it, you have to get really close to people, and also, as you know, one of the modifiers is, oh, hey, you take damage whenever people touch you. So those two things don't really mix well, but it's still really cool to have. I'm gonna catch up with chat here for a second.
He comes back, just like I knew he
So,
would.
apparently Davey Vampire has the order memorized on this map, so that's nice.
Sorry, you're right. I should have a look at chat and really engage.
Yeah, I get like I think I've become less of an art snob as I've kind of played more games. I think at the very beginning I was like, well, if it's not, you know, my conception of what games as art should be, then I shouldn't classify it as that, and that's not really something that I feel anymore. It's just something I've been in that. I've resembled that, you know? And yeah, I agree, Davey Vampire. I think, like, there are games that I enjoy grinding in, especially RPGs. Like Final Fantasy XIV, I will sit down and I will just play for hours and hours and hours, and I enjoy it quite a bit. But I don't think this game would have done well to have much of a grind. It really feels like I'm on a mission to get the thing done. I mean, you can even tell that from the walking animation. The kid is very purposeful. I don't know how to describe it other than that. And I think that, like...
He's punchy.
Yeah.
He's really walking with his upper body, which I've recently realized that's more than half of the walking, you know?
Yeah.
If you're walking with your upper body, you're really going somewhere.
He's always really going somewhere. I think there's not really a moment in... Actually, you know, I think that kind of brings into part of the narrative conceit, too. That, like, there's not really a lot of downtime in Bastion. You're always doing something. And, you know, I guess if the world has ended and you're trying to repair this big machine that you don't really know exactly what it does, you might be kind of in that position. I'm going to get the Forge next. I'd rather have my weapons upgradable. So I'm going to go ahead and work on the bow a little bit more. So we can either get extra 50% damage, or we can get errors that cause damage over time. I don't know if you can tell, I'm kind of a power shot. Like, it's just a big number game for me, so I'm just gonna grab 50% damage.
Surprise in every one
Nice.
of those arrows.
The cool thing also is the upgrades, even though they're just a simple dynamic, you pick one, you pick the other system, you do, like, actually get some context in the world for every one of the upgrades as to what you're actually doing to that weapon. And the narrator will then give you just a little bit of, like, this is what the kid is doing with this weapon.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really, I can't imagine how many hours of vocal recording they did for this game. It had to have been insane. So do we want to go to the sundown path, or do we want to go to the melting pot?
I love a good melting pot.
I do.
I live for melting.
Do you think there's gonna be fondue?
There's gonna be fun to do, I tell you.
Sealed tighter than the skin on the squirt.
Yeah, I mean, they also get a lot of mileage out of only a few enemies, which, like, as long as we're talking about D&D and its connections to these kinds of, like, level design paradigms. It's also
totally.
something I feel like...
I mean, honestly, like, what you've seen so far, you've got the swarm critter, you know, where it's like one's easy, but playing off 20 is supposed to be a cumulative disaster. You've got, what, the brutes, which are, you put those in amongst the swarm, and then you've got a dynamic where the swarm is more about restricting your movement more than anything else, for the brute to come in and sort of target you. So the brute will usually be slower than you, right? So if it's just you and him, you can sort of like outrun him all the time. But then you put a swarm in around you, and suddenly it's not so easy. So then, you know, you can really have a limited number of monsters, as long as they're really good in their function, you know, as well as the way in which you bring in things like the scarcity of space and that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm just talking up the fluff, but I feel like that makes sense.
No, it does, and I think like it's the kind of thing that really interests me from like a design perspective of like what are we really doing to make difficulty or to balance out these sorts of things, because they come with a construction and expectation of how the player is going to navigate these challenges, you know? Like, here's some other stuff, right? So this level is entirely different from the other two, other than, of course, I move around it the same. And that is that, you know, I'm waiting for this thing to come back. I'm waiting for this cage to lift, and I have to just survive until then. It's entirely different than the other two we've gone through so far, despite, you know, using the same enemies and being in the same game. And as you can see, there's also just squirts that ally themselves with me for no real clear reason, other than apparently squirts are fickle, I suppose. And cute. They're really cute. But yeah,
I mean, the swarm enemy.
Yes, so the swarm enemy, there are a couple that are running around now that are, like, allied with me instead of being allied with the enemy, and they're busy pulling aggro away from these heavy hitters.
That's cool. That's a way they can really, that's good for balancing. And, you know, because what you want is, you know, these kinds of games are all about having a couple core mechanics and then replicating them out to large numbers, you know?
Yeah.
So that what looks like chaos, if you play through the game, is organized. But then a way to counterbalance that, if you're just controlling one avatar, you know, of course, is to have some of the weaker enemies who largely are just moving obstacles, right? You know, allying with you, keeping away the kind of like, you know, to use a Halo terminology, not the brutes, but the elites. You know, to keep the elites off of you because you can take them down one at a time. I mean, that's good. And you're right, you don't need that much of a variety of monster, because all you end up doing is just having two monsters that look different, but functionally, in terms of level design, are the same. You know, they fill the same hole.
Yep, I'm playing a little coy right now. I'm using my tonics, and because they've given me a ton of tonic for this, they really want me to just use as many landmines as I desire. I picked up the landmine buff as part of this, so now I can just throw down a ton of landmines.
So is this also this would be like a tutorial as well, right? For that?
Yes.
Like an active tutorial.
The game really, like, I love this game very much, and I think there's a lot of difficulty in it, but like I said, it's not really a challenge until you start turning those modifiers on, and then it can really become quite a bear. But on top of that, you don't even get access to the modifiers until you're about halfway through the game. So this first half is substantially easier than the second half of the game, I would say. And that last level can be quite brutal. Oh yeah, I also have a continue.
And I predict why that is, you know, and it's the reason why the first Assassin's Creed, the only one I ever played, I felt so betrayed, because you have like Assassin's Creed did exactly what you're talking about here. They had active tutorials where you were building skills through story, through exploration, and then you come to the last mission, after which the last couple of like missions have all been about, well, now we're going to increase the difficulty by taking the distinct skills you've been learning through play, right, and overlapping them so that you have to essentially play multiple games at once.
Yeah.
But rather than having the final episode of the game be a accumulation of all of that stuff, it just boiled down into a kill ranks of soldiers kind of thing. And I'm still angry about that to this day, Red. I'm still angry about that.
I found I want to talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to quickly jump over to chat and see what I missed while we're sitting here.
But I only drew upon Assassin's Creed, of course, to say that that's what I predict about this game, that it's about learning distinct puzzle play, and then the latter half of the game will be sort of the emergent overlapping of those distinct puzzle plays into meta puzzles, you could say.
Yeah, we're not really getting... First of all, thank you for the follow, Davey Dampier. I hope you were enjoying yourself. Yeah, we're not... Like, it's hard to, like we're trying our best to have commentary and keep the game up. But yeah, also, I should mention, Matthew, every single world we're going to has, like, the narrator will tell you, hey, this is what this was used for. This is what, you know, the place... So, like, where we were at, as Davey points out in the chat, you know, was a prison, essentially. And so, you know, that was designed to kill the prisoners, essentially, or at least to keep them, you know, in control. And we just blasted through that challenge and ran out. But, you know, what was I going to say? Something else about something that had happened in chat. Yeah, I don't think this game gets repetitive as well, and I think it does a really good job of making the world feel lived in and managing all these things. And that's really hard to do with a narrator that's constantly talking to you. It's part of the reason you don't see that in film very often. It's really, or if you watch the Blade Runner cut where it's just Harrison Ford talking at you, you're like, why the hell is this? Who thought this would be a good idea? Some show don't tell, right? That's the paradigm. But here it works really well because you're getting information that I think you otherwise wouldn't be able to find out about the environment. And the narration just sounds amazing too. It's very easy on the ears.
Totally.
As you were saying about Assassin's Creed.
Walk, right? In terms of, like you were saying about making it feel like repetitive, because when you're like the higher order elements of a puzzle-based game, or rather, I mean, all games are kind of puzzle-based from what I'm talking about, because it's about distinct skills that braid together into higher order gameplay. And that higher order gameplay, if done badly, will feel repetitive, right? Because it's just a repetition of the basic elements you've learned at a higher level. But the thing about good level design, in theory, is that you will achieve higher order gameplay, which is more than the sum of its parts, right? Or not repetitive, because by bringing in together 2-3 distinct forms of play-based skill that you've been learning throughout the game, those combinations of skills, right, will emerge into something, you know, new, which is more than the sum of its parts, more than just a combinatorics of those distinct skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's emergent. The goal of trying to, it's not necessarily emergent, but it does feel like it edges at that sort of thing. Or some games where it really does feel like they're trying to simulate that idea of well, here's a complex set of abilities that you can do. Now capitalize on them, you know, and
now that capitalization's interesting because, you know, you ever play a game and you get that moment where you realize, oh, I can put these two things together, you know. Oh, of course I can do that, and then that's where you're filling in the gap, right?
Yeah.
That white space. But it's almost designed because you're supposed to make that. You're supposed to put two and two together in that way.
All right, we're supposed to rush
I
around
don't
and
know.
defeat.
I'm so readily able to talk about it.
I've already fucked
You know,
this
I've
up, by
been
the
thinking
way.
about something similar for my.
Go ahead. You're thinking about something similar for your what?
Yeah, so for D&D, you know, the ways in which you have sort of active tutorials, developing distinct skills, and then a player-led combinatorics that leads to higher order emergent play, you know, which is more than the sum of its parts. Because the ingredient that you can't make distinct, the ingredient that you can't bottle, is the player.
Yeah.
Making those instances, making those combinations.
Yeah, the trick is, and this is something, of course, that like most games can't really easily edge at, because if you're pre-designing the combinations, then it's really hard to make that combination feel meaningfully like something the player has generated. You know, I think that's
totally.
the thing about games that. Oh my god, this is hard. This is one of those challenge levels I was talking about.
The food-based analogy is that, you know, I can eat sliced ham, I can eat spring onions, I can crack an egg into my mouth and just eat it up, right? But to make an omelet, you know, out of those base ingredients is to make something that isn't just there evident in the combination of them.
Yeah.
You know, or rather in the distinct ingredients there. And then it's, you know, it's about how do you put the player into a position where we're making an omelet from those base ingredients, to still speak analogically, is the natural thing to do, in which there's a flow or a thrust to do them, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard, and because you also want to negotiate letting the player feel like they've made that decision, you know? Everything wants to feel like M-dashing or whatever else, you know? Or not M-dashing, I'm an idiot. Wave dashing, that's what it's called. I'm thinking about typesetting for some reason.
I go where you're planning to, though.
You want everything to feel, not everything, but you want every emergent mechanic to feel like that, where the players are like, we found this and we are using it, as opposed to, you know, something that's like, oh, well, of course you thought I was going to make that decision, you know? Predictive, you want to be as predictive as you can without coming off as predictive. It's the little, I knew you'd make that choice, but I'm not going to say anything about it because I'm the DM and I have a poker face right now.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's a weird little thing to try and strike that balance, I think. And I don't think a lot of games are able to do it. I don't think games are bad that aren't able to do it, because ultimately, you know, like, you know, it's more complicated than that. But it is really special when a game manages to get you to think, oh, hey, I'm the first person to come up with this strategy, you know, or this tactic. We got it.
And then that's interesting, because it leads me back to the chapter of metagaming I'm reading just now about speedrun, in which the concept is, of course, is that every aspect of a game is arbitrary when you're trying to get through it as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as designer intention when you're trying to fit between, you know, you somehow break through the graphical arena, fall, you know, to scale in the game 200 meters and you land in the final boss battle. That's legitimate play, right? Because the speed run trumps any other notion of, you know, how the game is supposed to be played.
Yeah.
And to point to what you were saying there, to come back to what you were saying there, you know, it's about I can't remember what was that was a branch. What was the trunk? Does anybody ever say that to you? You know, like
No, that's a new one, but I like it.
You know, it's when you go on an anecdote that goes way off topic, right? I'm always like, well, that was the branch. What was the trunk?
I was talking
because
about
then that's
trying to hide the predictive complexity of your mechanics. You know, trying to hide, oh, well, you know, you have this fire spell and this wind spell, and I've pre-programmed a way for you to combine them, but I want you to feel like you're the one who's figured it out, not me, you know?
Sure.
Trying to let the player feel like they've created the nuance in the game that you've already created in the nuance of the game.
Or I mean, the opposite of that, but also opposite, would be allowing your players to break the game,
Yeah.
and then finding a way to make it feel like you meant for that to happen.
Yeah, I think that's a lot more of what seems to happen in D&D, because you're working with a clear rule set that is unmovable, and the players probably know to some extent, and then everything else is you planning on top of it. So everything seems a little more improvisational than it does in a scripted environment. To hit the chat here quickly and catch up.
Yeah, let's see.
I completely agree. There are with Davey's comment here that there are a few games where their main mechanics is finding out interactions between seemingly disconnected systems, notably Fez, Antichamber, and Tokitori 2. I haven't played Tokitori 2, but Fez and Antichamber absolutely strike that chord really well. Fez is another game that, like, one of these days I will play it on here because it's just magical. And I don't know what else to say about this. Your cooking metaphor has struck a chord with our audience.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Dion.
And yeah, the jump crouching is an interesting thing with Payday 2. So I hadn't played enough Payday 2 to actually know that much about it. I'd heard about a little bit of it, and I definitely chopped into a couple maps where people were doing it, and I was like, what the hell is going on here?
I just David Van Peer's, statement there you said about games in which you have distinct, right, mini games that you move between and you have to master them all as distinct games.
Yeah.
Of course, to put it into context, stands in opposition to those games that have a core mechanic, right? A core central mechanic that once you get the hang of that, you can pretty much dominate however many different contexts in which it's presented,
Yes.
And it's interesting with that because, like we were saying last time around, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is one of those games where there's a central mechanic, right? A D20 skill-based mechanic, which if you can understand that, it's never going to stray too far away from that, right? But then if you look at something like Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, where you have like a series of distinct tables that you always defer to. Again, that's more of a modular kind of application of a universal rule, right? Look to the table and follow it. But then you have like, I'm not sure if I haven't really played a lot of role-playing games, to be honest. It's hard for my own homebrew, so I wouldn't know. But I've come into this tension in my own design, right? Between, do you go for just another flavor of your main product, which will be like, a certain kind of game mechanic, or do you go for something completely distinct? The problem with that is, of course, you can lose players that way. If you have several distinct game, you call them like arenas, If you have several distinct arenas that all have their own incommensurable mechanic, then some people like that, some people don't. But then if you have the other thing, where everything is commensurable to a central rule mechanic, it can feel a little bit diluted sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
It can feel like, because the thing is that, the best thing about like a role-playing game is, if you and the player have an agreement about what the design ambition is, right? If you have some sort of feeling or action you want to emerge out of it, then you can go for distinct incommensurable mechanics, right? Distinct arenas. But then again, if you have something like 5th edition, the casual nature of a universal mechanic can feel almost as constraining, right? As having to learn new rules whenever you come into a new domain, a new arena.
Well, I think it gets back to kind of like a normative way of engaging with like the social discourses of a game to some extent, right? It can be really tired to only ever have the same 5 words to say, even if those words are being said with your feet. But there are cases where, iterations on a core mechanic, the iterations on a core mechanic or a rhyme in a poem or something like that can come across as quite clever. In some ways, it's kind of like the thing that David Wojcik once told me about refrains in poetry. All right, so we were writing sestinas, which I believe, if I recall my poetic forms properly, sestinas, was it? I'm having a moment. It was something with refrains. I can't remember the exact form. This applies to all refrains, though, or any poem where you have the same refrain appearing over and over and over again. the importance of a refrain is not in the repetition of it, but in the variation that occurs there. So you can simply just say the same line over and over again, and that's a refrain. You've technically satisfied the qualifications. But what if you changed the punctuation in the line? What if you changed the, you know, the specific word? What if you swapped out one word for a word that sounds almost exactly the same? What if you reorganize the words in the line and use that as a refrain? You know, sure, that violates the technical structure of saying, okay, well, this is the same line over and over again throughout the poem, but the variations provide meaning, you know? And so core mechanics, I think, in a lot of sense, work like that, in that kind of poetic way, right? Where you want a mechanic that's versatile, that you can, you know, create more than one refrain with, as opposed to always doing the same thing over and over and over again with no variation, you know? It's how, I think that's how something like Devil May Cry gets away with itself, because it's a very, like, mechanically, it's very direct. There's one thing you really do, but every one of your moves and combos are variations and reconfigurations on that same social system, you know?
Sure, I haven't played Devil May Cry, but I'm Googling it just now.
Or a fighting game, like any fighting game, really. It has, like, a very one or two primary modes by which you attack people, and everything is about building complexity by rearranging those pieces.
All this toil.
Yeah, totally. I do know your discourse there. It works very well with what I was saying about the build-up of puzzle games there, with the distinct skills coming into new emergent, you know, combinatorics, and it's all. But what's common to both of those is the linear, you know, the linearity of it in building complexity, right? The ways in which a narrative is sometimes coupled with it as an explanatory tool, so that, you know, if you're introduced to a function in one skin, right, and then you're introduced to it in another, it's like David Kochik was saying, he likes to play the game, like, what was it? He was playing a game the other week, and he was like, okay, so there's a way that you can play that's not standard that you unlock afterwards, and I like to play those first, right? Because I like to play the abnormal way before I play the normal one. And it's that same breaking up of the design intention linearity, right? Because there can be a way in which, okay, well, you have to play 1, 2, 3 in order to understand 3, really, right? Because, or like whatever it is, level 1, 2, 3 or whatever. Because in order to understand level 3, you have to know 1 and 2 for that universal mechanic to have that same kind of, to be a progression, I guess, on those prior 2 iterations.
Yeah.
Don't know where that point was going, but hey ho.
Well, and we're out of time basically too, man. We got like 2 minutes to the hour.
Great.
Yeah. So you know, I hope you guys have really enjoyed the stream today. It's very, very nice to have you, David Vampire. It's been very nice to have you, Tambalaya. You know, our casual shout out to Scholars Play, which is an incredible channel. If you like us, go check them out. They stream Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Great people, great commentary. And we'll be back, I think, Wednesday with Lunch Zone. I don't know if is Ryan doing his morning either diss tracks or couch surfing? I think he is. Anyway, for those of you who might be new to the channel, we do different shows throughout the week. Coffee Break is usually a variety show. So if I'm not running it next week, which I'm not going to be running it every week. You know, you'll either come in for something like Excel DM or whatever Morgan wants to play. I assume you're planning on doing more Excel DM, right, Matthew? So yeah,
that is the only game I play, spreadsheet.
So yeah, come hang out with us more. Thank you for stopping in. And
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Am I coming through?
Yes. Hello.
I can't confirm yet. It's D&D plus spreadsheets. Plus a little bit of JavaScript. It's
a lot more entertaining than Matthew makes it sound. So yeah, no, come check us out.
Yeah, I thought that sounded very good.
Well,
excellent. Good.
Yeah, and have a great day, friends.
No, this is going to be a great summer, guys. This is going to be a great summer.
Hell yeah. Well, see you guys next time, and peace out.